The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It floated in the void between 3 star systems, a station so massive that it had its own gravity. 47 species sent their representatives here to decide the fate of worlds. For 12,000 years, this had been the center of galactic civilization. Daniel Carter stood at the entrance of the assembly chamber and tried not to feel small. He was Earth's first ambassador to the stars, chosen because he was calm under pressure and believed in the goodness of others. Behind him stood his small team of diplomats and scientists. They had traveled for 3 months to reach this place, carrying humanity's hopes in their hands. The chamber was circular, with seats rising up in tiers like an ancient amphitheater. Thousands of aliens watched as the humans walked to the center platform. Some of these beings had scales. Others had fur or feathers or skin that shifted colors. A few existed as clouds of gas held together by magnetic fields. Daniel had studied all of them during the long journey. He knew their names, their histories, their customs. He wanted this first meeting to go well. High Speaker Exorveth presided over the council from an elevated throne. He was Velthari, an insectoid species that had dominated galactic politics for 3,000 years. His body was covered in black chitin that gleamed under the lights. His forearms were folded across his chest, and his compound eyes showed no emotion as he watched the humans approach. Daniel stopped at the speaking platform and bowed respectfully. He had practiced this moment 100 times. He knew exactly what he wanted to say. "High Speaker, honored delegates," he began. "On behalf of the people of Earth, I bring greetings and gratitude. For generations, we looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone. Now we know the answer. We stand here today not as conquerors or beggars, but as neighbors who wish to introduce themselves." He paused and looked around the chamber. Some delegates seemed curious. Others seemed bored. A few were whispering to each other in languages his translator couldn't catch. "Humanity seeks membership in the Galactic Council," Daniel continued. "We offer friendship, trade, and cultural exchange. We wish to learn from your great civilizations and share what little wisdom we have gathered. We believe that together, we can build a better future for all species." He finished his speech and waited. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then High Speaker Xorveth made a sound that Daniel's translator identified as laughter. "The creature believes it deserves a seat among us," the High Speaker said. His voice echoed through the chamber, and soon other delegates began to laugh as well. "Tell me, human, what do you offer the Council? Your ships are slow and fragile. Your weapons are primitive toys. Your species has only possessed space travel for 2 of your centuries. We have ruled the stars for 12,000 years." Daniel felt heat rising to his face, but he kept his voice steady. "We offer our friendship, High Speaker. Our willingness to learn and grow. Our determination to contribute to galactic society. Friendship." The High Speaker's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "We have no need of friendship from primitives. Your species is barely evolved beyond the animals you share your planet with. You have nothing we want and nothing we need." A Kreth delegate spoke up from the upper tiers. The Kreth were reptilian, with scales of deep green and eyes like molten gold. Perhaps they could serve as laborers. The mining colonies always need workers who can survive in harsh conditions. "An excellent suggestion," the High Speaker agreed. "Humanity may join the Council as a protectorate species. You will dismantle your military vessels. You will provide workers for our industrial operations. In exchange, we will protect you from the dangers of the galaxy and allow you to exist." Daniel felt his heart sink. This was not an offer of membership. This was an offer of slavery wrapped in polite words. He thought of Earth, of the billions of people who had celebrated when first contact was made. They had dreamed of exploring the stars alongside new friends. Now those dreams were turning to ash. "I must decline," Daniel said. "Humanity will not become servants to anyone. We came here seeking equals, not masters." The laughter grew louder. The High Speaker leaned forward on his throne, his compound eyes glittering with contempt. "You decline?" Little creature, you do not understand your position. The Council does not make requests. We are offering you survival. Without our protection, your species will be conquered by the first aggressive civilization that discovers your world. You are weak. You are alone. You have no choice. Daniel looked around the chamber one final time. He saw the mocking faces of delegates who ruled empires spanning thousands of worlds. He saw species that had traveled between stars when humanity was still learning to make fire. And he saw something else in their eyes, something that disturbed him more than their contempt. He saw absolute certainty that they were superior. They truly believed that humanity was nothing more than a curiosity, a primitive species that had stumbled onto the galactic stage by accident. They did not see potential or possibility when they looked at humans. They saw insects to be stepped on or servants to be used. Daniel straightened his spine and spoke clearly so that every delegate could hear him. Humanity does not kneel, he said. We came here seeking friends. You have made it clear that you prefer to make enemies. So be it. But I want you to remember this moment, High Speaker. Remember how you laughed at us. Remember how you offered us chains and called it protection. Because one day, you will regret this choice. The High Speaker waved one of his forearms dismissively. Threats from primitives mean nothing. Go back to your little world, human. When your people are starving and your enemies are at your gates, you will return here and accept whatever terms we offer. Daniel turned and walked out of the chamber without another word. His team followed in silence. Behind them, the laughter of 47 species echoed off the walls. Within 72 hours, every human vessel had departed Council space. Every diplomatic channel was closed. Every probe and satellite that humanity had placed near Council borders was recalled. Earth sealed itself behind a wall of silence and disappeared from galactic awareness. The Council members found this amusing for a few years. They made jokes about the primitive species that had thrown a tantrum and run home. They placed small wagers on how long it would take for humanity to come crawling back. Most bets were measured in decades. High Speaker Zorvith gave it 10 years at most. They will return, he told his advisors. They have no choice. The galaxy is too dangerous for a species so weak to survive alone. He was wrong about many things that day, but he was most wrong about humanity's capacity to change. On Earth, Daniel Carter delivered his report to the United Nations. He told them everything, the laughter, the contempt, the offer of servitude disguised as protection. He told them what the galaxy truly thought of humanity. And then something remarkable happened. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth agreed on something. They would not kneel. They would not beg. They would not accept slavery under any name. They would prepare. The stars had shown humanity its place in the galaxy. Now humanity would show the stars what a mistake they had made. The galaxy forgot about Earth. 150 years passed, and humanity became nothing more than a strange story that older species told their young. There was once a primitive species that dared to ask for equality, the story went. They were laughed out of the council chamber and were never heard from again. Some said they had destroyed themselves in nuclear war. Others said they had been conquered by pirates. Most simply did not care. But behind the wall of silence, humanity was working. Admiral Laura Mitchell was 53 years old when she took command of the newly formed United Earth Defense Force. She had spent her entire career preparing for a war that most people believed would never come. Now she stood in the command center of humanity's first orbital shipyard and watched construction drones assemble the skeleton of a warship. "How long until she's ready?" Laura asked. The chief engineer, a tired man named Gregory Adams, checked his tablet. 6 months for the hull. Another year for weapons and propulsion. We're still working out problems with the new reactor design. Laura nodded. 6 months was too long. But it was better than the 10 years they had estimated when the project began. Human engineers had made remarkable progress since the isolation began. They had to. The survival of their species depended on it. The humiliation at the council chamber had changed everything. When Daniel Carter returned to Earth with news of how the galaxy viewed humanity, something shifted in the collective mind of the species. Old rivalries suddenly seemed foolish. Ancient hatreds lost their meaning. What did it matter if you were from one nation or another, when the entire galaxy saw you as nothing more than animals? Within 5 years of the isolation, every nation had dissolved its individual military into a single force under United Earth Command. Within 10 years, humanity had tripled its space infrastructure. Within 20 years, they had colonies on every planet and moon in their solar system, but Laura knew it was not enough. Human ships were still slow. Human weapons were still weak. They needed something more. Something that would change the balance of power forever. That something arrived in the form of Lieutenant Commander Kevin Brooks. Kevin was an explorer, one of the few humans brave or foolish enough to venture beyond Council-mapped space. He commanded a small research vessel called the Wanderer, and his mission was simple: find resources, find knowledge, find anything that could help humanity survive. What he found was beyond anyone's imagination. The Architect ruins floated in a dead system at the edge of the galaxy. They were ancient beyond measure, built by a species that had vanished before the Council even existed. Kevin's ship detected energy readings that should have been impossible, coming from structures that looked like they had been abandoned for millions of years. He sent a message back to Earth and then began exploring. The Architects had been masters of technology that made Council science look like children's toys. Their computers still functioned, powered by reactors that seemed to draw energy from the fabric of space itself. Their databases contained knowledge of physics that human scientists had never dreamed of. Their weapons, preserved in endless storage vaults, could destroy stars. Kevin spent 3 months cataloging what he found. Then he loaded his ship with everything it could carry and raced back to Earth. Director Samantha Price was in charge of reverse engineering the Architect technology. She was a physicist who had won every major scientific award on Earth, but nothing in her career had prepared her for what Kevin brought home. "This is impossible," she said, staring at the energy readings from an Architect power cell. "This violates at least 4 laws of physics that I know of." "And yet it works," Kevin replied. "I've been running it for months. It never loses power. It never generates heat. It just works." Samantha spent the next 10 years of her life figuring out why. She assembled a team of the best scientists on Earth, and together they slowly unlocked the secrets of a dead civilization. The first breakthrough was propulsion. The Architects had developed a method of folding space that allowed their ships to cross the galaxy in hours instead of years. It took humanity 30 years to build a working prototype. But when the first fold drive activated and a test ship vanished from one location and appeared in another instantly, Samantha cried tears of joy. The second breakthrough was weapons. The Architects had created devices that could tear apart matter at the atomic level. Human engineers studied these devices and built their own versions, scaled up for warfare. A single Architect-derived weapon could do more damage than every nuclear bomb ever built on Earth combined. The third breakthrough was defense. Architect shields operated on principles that Council species had never discovered. They did not simply absorb energy, they redirected it, sent it somewhere else in space and time. A ship protected by these shields was nearly invulnerable to conventional attacks. Admiral Mitchell watched as the first complete warship rolled out of the orbital shipyard. It was called the Defiant, and it was 3 kilometers long. Its hull was black as the void between stars, and its weapons arrays glowed with barely contained power. "She's beautiful," Gregory Adams said. Laura nodded slowly. "Build me more. Build me hundreds. Build me thousands." The shipyards expanded. New facilities were constructed in orbit around Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Workers labored in 3 shifts around the clock. Humanity threw everything it had into the construction effort because everyone understood what was at stake. They were not building a fleet. They were building vengeance. As the decades passed, more expeditions were sent to the Architect ruins. More technology was recovered. Human scientists did not simply copy what they found. They improved upon it. They combined Architect knowledge with human creativity and produced things that even the ancient builders might not have imagined. 100 years after the isolation began, Earth had a fleet of 500 warships. Each one was more powerful than anything the Council possessed. 125 years after the isolation began, that number had doubled. Admiral Mitchell did not live to see the fleet completed. She died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 107, surrounded by family and friends. But before she died, she passed command to a young officer named Nathan Cole. "Remember why we built this fleet?" she told him on her deathbed. "Not for conquest. Not for revenge. For survival. For respect. For the right to stand as equals among the stars." Nathan held her hand and made a promise. "I will remember, Admiral. We all will." On the day the 1,000 warship was completed, Nathan stood on the bridge of the flagship and looked out at the assembled armada. 1,000 vessels of war, each one capable of destroying a planet. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, and the galaxy had no idea it existed. Nathan opened a channel to every ship in the fleet. His voice was calm, but his words carried the weight of 150 years of preparation. "The time has come," he said. "Tomorrow, we remind the galaxy that humanity still exists. Tomorrow, we show them what we have become. Tomorrow, we return." 1,000 crews cheered as one. The sound echoed through the vacuum of space, carried by communication systems that linked every human vessel together. Earth was ready. High Speaker Exoreveth was 230 years old, ancient even by Velthari standards. His chitin had faded from black to gray, and his movements were slow and careful. But his mind remained sharp, and his grip on power remained absolute. He had ruled the Galactic Council for longer than most species had possessed space travel. Today was a day of celebration. The Velthari had just conquered their 4th species in the last century, adding billions of new slaves to their empire. The Council had done nothing to stop them, of course. The Council never stopped the strong from taking what they wanted. That was how the galaxy worked. Azorveth sat in his private chambers, reviewing reports of the conquest. The new slaves would be put to work in the mining colonies. Their world would be stripped of resources. Their culture would be erased. In a few generations, they would forget they had ever been free. This was the natural order of things. The strong ruled. The weak served. It had been this way for 12,000 years. And it would be this way for 12,000 more. A junior officer burst into the chamber without warning. His compound eyes were wide with something Zorveth had not seen in a long time: fear. "High Speaker," the officer stammered. "Ships. Thousands of ships. They appeared from nowhere." Exorveth rose slowly from his seat. "What ships? Where?" "Here, High Speaker." "They are here. Right outside the station." "Here, High Speaker." "Here, High Speaker." "Here, High Speaker." Exorveth activated the display screen on his wall. What he saw made his ancient heart skip a beat. 1,000 warships hung in perfect formation in front of the Council station. They were massive, each one larger than the biggest Velthari dreadnought. Their hulls were black as the space between stars, and their weapons arrays pulsed with energy that made the sensors scream warnings. The ships bore no markings that Zorveth recognized. Their design was unlike anything in Council databases. For one terrible moment, he wondered if a new power had emerged from beyond known space. Then the lead ship broadcast a signal, and a human face appeared on every screen in Council space. Fleet Admiral Nathan Cole looked directly into the camera. He was tall for a human, with gray hair and eyes that held no warmth. Behind him, the bridge of his warship hummed with quiet power. "This is Fleet Admiral Nathan Cole of the United Earth Armada," he said. His voice was calm and steady, like a man who had nothing to fear. 150 years ago, you told us we were primitive. You told us we were weak. You told us to kneel." He paused, and the silence stretched across 1,000 worlds. "We did not kneel. We built. We learned. We prepared. And now we have returned." Exorveth stared at the screen with growing horror. Humans, the primitives, the species he had laughed at and dismissed and forgotten. They had returned with a fleet that dwarfed anything the Council possessed. "Impossible," he whispered. Their technology was centuries behind ours. They could not have advanced this far so quickly. But the evidence floated before his eyes. 1,000 warships, each one reading off energy signatures that made Council ships look like children's toys. Weapons that should not exist, shields that should not be possible. The humans had not simply caught up to the Council, they had surpassed it completely. The Council station erupted into chaos. Delegates scrambled to their ships. Military commanders screamed orders at their crews. Emergency protocols that had not been activated in centuries suddenly came alive. High Speaker Zorveth tried to restore order. He sent messages to his admirals, demanding they assemble the Velthari home fleet. He contacted allies, called in favors, threatened and promised in equal measure. Within hours, he had gathered a response force of 400 warships, the largest fleet the Council had deployed in 3,000 years. It should have been more than enough to destroy the humans. It should have been overwhelming force that would send the primitives fleeing back to their little world. Admiral Cole watched the Council fleet approach on his tactical display. His officers looked to him, waiting for orders. Many of them had trained their entire lives for this moment. Their parents and grandparents had worked in the shipyards, building the vessels that would carry humanity back to the stars. This was the culmination of everything their species had suffered and sacrificed. "Admiral," his second-in-command said, "the Council fleet is powering weapons." Cole nodded slowly. "Let them fire first. I want the galaxy to know who started this." The Council fleet launched the first attack. Thousands of missiles and energy beams raced toward the human formation. On Council ships, gunners cheered, certain that the primitive humans would be destroyed in moments. The attack struck the human shields and vanished. Not deflected, not absorbed, simply gone, redirected to somewhere else in the universe. The human ships did not even shudder. Silence fell across the Council fleet as they realized their weapons had done nothing. "Our turn," Admiral Cole said quietly. The human fleet fired once, just once. The Council formation disappeared. 400 warships, representing the greatest military power in 12,000 years of galactic history, ceased to exist in the span of a heartbeat. There were no explosions, no debris, no survivors. The ships were simply erased from reality by weapons the Council could not comprehend. Admiral Cole opened another broadcast channel. "This fleet represented the best the Council could gather against us," he said. "It took us one shot to destroy it. We have 999 more shots ready. We have 1,000 ships, and each one carries weapons you cannot imagine. Do you understand your position now?" On the Council station, High Speaker Exorveth watched in stunned silence. His greatest admirals were dead. His finest ships were dust, and the human fleet had not even moved from formation. "What do you want?" he finally asked. His voice, once so confident and mocking, now trembled with fear. Admiral Cole's expression did not change. 150 years ago, your predecessor offered us a choice: slavery or destruction. We rejected both. We chose to become something more than you ever imagined possible. Now we offer you the same choice. The High Speaker's compound eyes darted around the chamber, seeking an escape that did not exist. "You can accept our terms," Cole continued. "You can release your slaves. You can reform your government. You can join us in building a better galaxy. Or you can resist, and we will remove you from power ourselves. The choice is yours." He leaned closer to the camera. "But I want you to understand something, High Speaker. We did not come here seeking revenge. We came here seeking justice. The galaxy you built is rotten. The strong prey on the weak. The powerful crush anyone who dares to challenge them. That ends today." Admiral Cole straightened and addressed the entire galaxy. "To every species watching this broadcast, the old order is finished. No longer will you kneel to tyrants. No longer will you watch your people be enslaved while the Council does nothing. Humanity stands with you now, and we will not abandon you." On 1,000 worlds, beings who had lived their entire lives under oppression looked up at the sky with something they had not felt in generations: hope. The Council tried to negotiate. They had no choice. Their greatest fleet had been destroyed in a single moment, and the human armada still hung in space like a sword waiting to fall. High Speaker Zorveth sent his best diplomats to meet with the humans, hoping to find some way out of this disaster. Ambassador Katie Warren received them aboard the diplomatic vessel Aurora. She was a small woman with dark hair and sharp eyes, and she carried herself with a quiet confidence that made the alien diplomats nervous. They had expected humans to be crude and aggressive. Instead, they found someone who reminded them uncomfortably of themselves. Katie was the great-great-granddaughter of Daniel Carter, the first human to stand before the Galactic Council. She had grown up hearing stories of her ancestors' humiliation. She had dedicated her life to ensuring that no human would ever be treated that way again. "We offer full membership in the Council," the lead Velthari diplomat said. "Equal voting rights, trading privileges, territory in the outer systems. Everything your species originally requested." Katie listened politely, her hands folded on the table before her. When the diplomat finished, she smiled. "That is a generous offer," she said. 150 years ago, we would have accepted it with gratitude. But the galaxy has changed since then. You have changed it, through your cruelty and your greed. Now we require something more." She activated a display screen and began listing humanity's demands. Every species that had been enslaved during the Silent Years would be freed immediately. The Velthari would release all conquered populations and return their home worlds. The Kreth would withdraw from territories they had seized through force. War criminals would face tribunals for their actions, and the Council itself would be dissolved and reformed with equal representation for every species, regardless of military power. The diplomats stared at the list with growing despair. These demands would destroy everything their civilizations had built. The Velthari Empire would collapse. The Kreth domains would shrink to nothing. The great powers of the galaxy would become no different from the species they had conquered. "This is impossible," the lead diplomat protested. "You are asking us to destroy ourselves." Katie's smile did not waver. "We are asking you to become better. That is not the same thing." The negotiations broke down. The Council rejected humanity's demands, hoping that perhaps the human fleet would leave, or that some weakness could be exploited. They did not understand what they were dealing with. They did not realize that humanity had spent 150 years preparing for this exact scenario. The war began at dawn, Galactic Standard Time. Captain Derek Simmons led the first strike wing against the Velthari home fleet. His squadron of 30 Falcon-class destroyers jumped into the heart of Velthari space and found 400 enemy warships waiting for them. The Velthari commanders laughed when they saw the small human force. 30 ships against 400? The humans were clearly insane. They ordered their fleet to attack, expecting an easy victory. Derek's squadron did not even bother to dodge. They flew straight into the enemy formation, their shields absorbing every attack without damage. The Velthari watched in horror as their most powerful weapons bounced harmlessly off the human ships. Then Derek gave the order to fire. The Falcon-class destroyers carried weapons derived from Architect technology. Each shot tore through Velthari shields like they did not exist. Each hit destroyed a warship completely. In 10 minutes, the entire Velthari home fleet was gone, and Derek had not lost a single vessel. He broadcast a message to the Velthari homeworld as his squadron assumed orbit. "Your military is destroyed. Your government is fallen. You may surrender and face justice, or you may resist and face annihilation. Choose wisely." The Velthari chose to surrender. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Human forces struck at military installations, government centers, and slave labor camps. They were surgical and precise, targeting only those who had committed crimes against other species. Civilians were never harmed. Cities were never destroyed. This was not a war of conquest. It was a war of liberation. Commander Ashley Turner led the ground forces that freed the slave worlds. She was a veteran soldier who had served in the Defense Force for 30 years, and she had seen humanity at both its best and its worst. What she found on the Velthari slave planets tested even her hardened soul. Billions of beings from dozens of species lived in conditions that made the darkest chapters of human history look mild. They worked in mines and factories until their bodies gave out. They were bred like animals to produce more workers. They had been stripped of their names, their cultures, their very identities. Ashley's soldiers moved through the camps, breaking chains and opening gates. Many of the slaves did not understand what was happening at first. They had lived in captivity for so long that the concept of freedom was foreign to them. "Who are you?" A young female from a species Ashley did not recognize asked. Her body was scarred from years of hard labor, and her eyes held the emptiness of someone who had given up hope long ago. Ashley knelt beside her and spoke gently. "We are humans. We came to set you free." The female stared at her for a long moment. Then tears began to fall from her alien eyes. "Free?" she whispered. "What does that word mean?" Ashley took her hand. "It means you belong to yourself. It means no one will ever hurt you again. It means you can go home." Similar scenes repeated across 100 worlds. Humans freed billions of beings who had never known anything but chains. They provided food, medicine, and transportation for those who wanted to return to their home planets. They helped rebuild societies that had been crushed by Velthari oppression. The Kreeth Empire surrendered after their emperor watched a human battle group reduce his flagship to atoms. He transmitted his surrender from his knees, begging for mercy that he had never shown to his own victims. The humans accepted his surrender and arrested him for war crimes. High Speaker Zorveth attempted to flee. He had ruled the council for centuries, and he could not accept that his reign was ending. He boarded his private vessel and tried to escape to the outer territories, where he hoped to find refuge. Lieutenant Ryan Cooper's patrol group intercepted him before he could reach open space. The ancient Velthari was brought aboard the human flagship in restraints, forced to walk through corridors lined with human soldiers who stared at him with cold eyes. Admiral Cole was waiting in the command center. "You were right about one thing," Cole said, looking down at the trembling insectoid. "We were primitive. We were weak. But you made a mistake that every bully makes. You assumed we would stay that way." Zorveth tried to speak, to plead, to threaten, but the words died in his throat as he realized that nothing he said would change his fate. "You will not be executed," Cole continued. "Humanity does not believe in revenge. You will be tried for your crimes. You will be judged by the species you oppressed, and you will spend whatever remains of your life knowing that the galaxy you built on cruelty and suffering is gone forever." The war lasted 6 hours. In that time, humanity destroyed the military power of species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. But they did not destroy the species themselves. They freed the enslaved. They arrested the guilty. They offered mercy to those who surrendered, and they began building something new. 1 year had passed since the war ended, and the galaxy was still learning how to be free. The old council station had been destroyed, not by human weapons, but by the people who had once been ruled from within its walls. They had torn it apart piece by piece, erasing a symbol of oppression that had loomed over them for thousands of years. In its place, a new station was being built, designed by engineers from 100 different species working together for the first time. The Galactic Assembly met for the first time on a bright morning in the human calendar. Representatives from every known species filled the circular chamber, sitting in seats that were all the same size, at tables that were all the same height. There were no elevated thrones. There were no special sections for powerful species. Everyone was equal. Ambassador Katie Warren stood at the central speaking platform. Behind her, a holographic display showed the faces of beings from across the galaxy, watching this historic moment from their home worlds. Trillions of individuals waited to hear what humanity would say now that they had won. Katie looked out at the assembled delegates. She saw former enemies who had tried to destroy her species. She saw new allies who had joined humanity in the final days of the war. She saw representatives from species that had been slaves just months ago, still learning what it meant to have a voice. And she saw the hope in their eyes, mixed with fear of what the future might hold. 151 years ago, she began. My ancestor came to a place like this seeking friendship. He was laughed at. He was dismissed. He was told that humanity was nothing. She paused and let the silence stretch across the chamber. He did not argue. He did not beg. He simply left and told you to remember that moment. I wonder how many of you remembered his words during the long years that followed. I wonder how many of you thought about that day when you saw our fleet appear before your worlds. A few delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Katie continued, "We could have conquered you. We had the power. When our ships appeared in your skies, there was nothing in the galaxy that could stop us. We could have done to you what you did to so many others. We could have made you kneel." Her voice hardened slightly. "We chose not to. Not because we are weak, not because we are foolish, but because we are better than that. Humanity learned something during our years of isolation. We learned that true strength is not measured by how many species you can conquer. It is measured by how many you can lift up." She gestured to the assembled delegates. "Look around this chamber. Look at the beings sitting beside you. Some of them were your enemies. Some of them were your slaves. Some of them you had never even heard of until a year ago. But today, they are your equals. Today, they have the same voice that you have. Today, the strong cannot prey upon the weak simply because they can." Admiral Nathan Cole sat in the human delegation, watching Katie speak. He was old now, approaching the end of his long career. His hair had turned completely white, and his joints ached from decades of service. But his eyes still held the fire that had driven humanity through the silent years. He thought about all the people who had made this moment possible. Admiral Laura Mitchell, who had built the first warships, Director Samantha Price, who had unlocked the secrets of the architects, Lieutenant Commander Kevin Brooks, who had found the ruins that changed everything, Daniel Carter, who had faced the mockery of the galaxy with dignity and promised that humanity would remember. They were all gone now, but their work lived on in the fleet that hung in orbit above the station, and in the free peoples who now had a voice in galactic affairs. Katie was still speaking. "The galaxy told us what we were: primitive, weak, worthless. We showed the galaxy what we could become: not conquerors, not tyrants, not masters seeking new servants. Partners." She smiled the same smile her ancestor had worn when he walked out of the old council chamber 151 years ago. "Humanity is not perfect. We are stubborn. We are proud. We hold grudges longer than we should. But we also remember those who stand with us. We protect those who cannot protect themselves, and we never, ever give up." She raised her hand in greeting to the assembly. "To our new friends, welcome. To our old enemies, you have a choice. Join us in building something better, or be left behind." The galaxy moves forward now. The chamber erupted in applause. Species that had never agreed on anything cheered alongside one another. Former slaves embraced former masters who had chosen to change. The sound echoed off the walls and carried out into space, where the human fleet waited in silent vigil. Admiral Cole rose from his seat and walked to join Katie at the speaking platform. The applause slowly faded as the delegates waited to hear from the man who had led the human fleet to victory. 150 years ago, Cole said. "I was not yet born, but my grandmother was. She was a child when Daniel Carter returned from the council with news of humanity's humiliation. She told me that story every night before I went to sleep. She wanted me to remember. She wanted me to understand why we had to be ready." He looked out at the assembly with eyes that had seen empires fall and worlds burn. "I built warships my entire life. I trained crews and planned battles, and prepared for a war that I hoped would never come. When it did come, I led our fleet to victory. I gave the order that destroyed the Council's greatest armada in a single moment." His voice softened. "But this is what I was truly fighting for. Not the destruction of our enemies, not revenge for past humiliations. This, a galaxy where species can meet as equals. A galaxy where the weak are protected, not exploited. A galaxy where my grandchildren will never have to build warships because they are afraid." He turned to look at Katie, who was watching him with tears in her eyes. "Ambassador Carter's ancestor made a promise to this galaxy. He said you would remember the day you laughed at humanity. I hope you do remember it. Not as a source of shame, but as a reminder of how far we have all come. The galaxy that mocked us is gone. The galaxy we built together stands in its place." In orbit above the station, the human fleet began powering down its weapons. 1,000 warships, each one capable of destroying worlds, fell silent for the first time since they were built. Their crews looked out at the stars that humanity now called home and felt a peace that their ancestors could only dream of. On Earth, celebrations erupted in every city. People danced in the streets, laughed with strangers, and cried tears of joy. They had done the impossible. They had faced a hostile galaxy alone and emerged victorious. They had earned their place among the stars, and in the Galactic Assembly, a new era began. An era where species worked together instead of competing. An era where the strong protected the weak instead of enslaving them. An era built on the simple idea that every intelligent being deserved dignity and respect. The stars, once so distant and terrifying, now felt like home. Humanity had returned to the galaxy. And this time, they were here to stay.